Hello, Bishop William Johnson of the Diocese of Des Moines and St. Ambrose Cathedral. The mysteries of the Christmas season, including the Epiphany, and then of course the Baptism of the Lord, all fold together. Interesting how the Baptism of the Lord, obviously the centrality of water, the wedding feast of Cana is also traditionally associated with one of these mysteries where Jesus manifests his divine nature to us as well. But even in some of these other experiences of the disciples with Jesus, some that involve water, such as Mark's Gospel, chapter 6, verses 46 to 52, which is one of the weekday readings in the Christmas season as well, we see something dynamic happening on that I think relates very much to what we may be experiencing in our own time right now. And so Jesus, who's maybe trying to get his 10,000 steps in as he goes up the mountain to pray, and then he's walking on the water, getting some water therapy, if you will, always praying, I'm sure. But the disciples in the boat, he first intends to pass by them. He's a divine person, but in response to their plight, he changes his mind and returns. His compassion for those who are terrified, who are said to have hardened hearts, I think not because they're set on evil, but that's what fear and anxiety tends to do. We get locked into our own habits of life, and we tend to go there. We even befriend or cling to our own fears at times, and it can become a kind of private torture chamber for us. And so God, who wants to call us to greater faith by going ahead of us, stretching us, sometimes has to be patient with us. God remains always with us. But do we remain always with God? We are not yet perfected in faith, hope, and love, but do we give Jesus that ongoing opportunity so that in those ways that we can even assent to the apparent absence of storm, clouds, or other losses that would touch us in our lives? Our lackluster communion, where we don't do those things intentionally that would seal our connection with other people. You would think that the disciples, maybe in that boat, even though they're all in their own little private zones right at that moment, what it would have been different if one had reached out to the other and said, "Remember when Jesus fed us? When he multiplied the loaves? He's capable of anything." And so he who prays always, could we pray now in this particular moment with each other? How would that have transformed everyone else's attitudes and diminished their fears? I recall a flight many, many years ago on one of those commuter jets when I was returning to central Iowa. They must not have gotten the weather report right, because a huge summer thunderstorm came up and we were caught in the thick of it. In fact, it turns out we were the only jet to land at the area airport that night. And though I was sitting next to a woman and was very polite, we really didn't engage in conversation until we were rocking and rolling in that storm. She must have seen that finger rosary on my hand. I wasn't dressed even as a priest at that moment, but this pregnant woman reached out and took hold of my hand, and a new connection as we began to talk to each other. Not explicit prayers, but I think there was a spirit bond as she shared her fears and I could share my own in that particular way. One of the saints who helps us in this year dedicated to St. Joseph is Blessed Andre Bessette of Montreal, the famous Holy Cross brother who lived to age 91. He was just one of these simple, humble fellows, a holy man, but that holiness was so approachable to people who in their own affliction must have felt, Blessed Andre has a deep connection with St. Joseph. If I can just connect with him, share something of my story, and ask him to pray, life will be different. Perhaps miraculous healing, but those more ready healings where hearts are softened and again trust, and are able then to embrace those apparent absences as times when maybe God goes before us. Just as Blessed Andre and his companions had to deal with the pandemic of 1918, so too we, who look for God to help us pass over to the other shore, place our trust in him and our prayers and our means of being present, so that the God who remains with us always, and certainly in his Eucharistic presence, available to us for adoration in the tabernacle, but moreover in the gathering of the assembly when we pray the Holy Mass with each other. Cardinal Robert Sarah has asked us to return to the Eucharist with joy. Isn't that the prompting and tug on our hearts, that God's love might meet our own, stirred to even deeper fervor and trust with him? That our purified hearts, our renewed amazement, our increased desire to meet the Lord and be with Him, and to receive Him and be in connection, communion with our brothers and sisters. And so we're going to encourage parishes of the diocese, many of whom already have regular times of Eucharistic adoration, some of whom are even perpetual, but that we would all take intentional time during the week to gather, to pray that God might give us clearer vision of where He's going and what He asks of us as a diocesan church, and to convert our hearts so that we might be equipped to be what He needs us to be in this momentous time in which we live. And so Jesus, perfect us in love, cast out our fear, draw us to peace, so that we might be free to say, yes, go on ahead, but we are close on your heels as you draw us through the waters to ever life in abundance. May God continue to bless you. Let's continue to pray for each other.